Shabbat Shalom. It is a little unusual not having that echo of Shabbat Shalom coming back from a group in the room, which leads to the question, what are we happy few, what are we doing here? What in the world are we doing? We could be home. We can daven at home quite comfortably. There is, in fact, nothing different between davening at home and davening in a synagogue, except for the opportunity to do the Kedusha, the Kaddish, and Baruch when you have a minyan. But there is one thing you can't quite do just isolated and by yourself at home. And that is to study Torah. Yes, I know that it is certainly possible to open a book and to begin to study, but as we've talked about many times, study is best done with a group, and the group has an obligation to read Torah. So even though we are not introducing another vector of transmission and leaving the Torah scroll in the ark, we still read Torah publicly, for those who are gathered and those who are gathered electronically. Why though? Why did this become a centerpiece of our most important services? Well, on the one hand, you have the very obvious, which is, as we see in this week's Torah portion of the Har, and especially the Chukotai, we are obligated to follow God's Torah. Now, if you are obligated to follow a set of rules and laws, you better make sure you know what they actually say. And if you are going to get behind the wheel of a car, you need to understand what the laws of the road are, as well as the basic mechanics of your vehicle, so that you and everyone else around you will be safe. It would be foolhardy to jump behind the wheel without knowing the rules. And when it comes to life, you are already behind the wheel, whether you like it or not. You cannot opt out of this particular transportation system. And therefore, knowing Torah and making sure that everyone knows Torah is a minimum of what is expected. But once I have taken my driver's test, once I have proven that I know the laws of the road well enough, I'm left alone. I do not have to go back in for recertification year after year. I do not find that there is no expectation that I'm going to go take additional driving classes. If I want to go take a hazardous driving class, I can. If I want to go take a spot driving class, I can. But no one is expecting that. Once you know it, you know it. And indeed, there were a few throughout our history that have said, look, once you know Torah, you know Torah. Right? Got it? Done? Good. Go do it. Why do we need to keep doing it over and over and over? Why engage in such passion for Torah study that, as I mentioned, we will be staying up late into the night on Tikkun Leil Shavuot, trying to get just a little bit more in before the anniversary of the Torah's giving? Well, historically, there have been two schools of thought that have tried to answer the question of why do we study Torah so passionately. School number one says when you study Torah with a passion, more than just getting the rules down, but when you truly allow yourself to be absorbed in the Torah, you change yourself. That it has an effect on you that is different than simply learning the rules of the road and getting behind the wheel of a car. But instead, it reaches deep into you as you reread and restudy and re-understand the different rules and laws and narratives of the Torah. You begin to see parts of yourself in greater detail. And rather than merely learning how to obey the rules, you learn how the rules are embedded within you, within the world around you, and how they can flow naturally into your behavior. So that eventually the way you look at the world is fundamentally altered. You look at the world through eyes that see justice and see compassion. You look at the world through eyes that see the need for mercy, the need for giving to others. You look through with a heart that has now gained discipline, has now gained a structure and a strength that is able to weather anything the world throws at it with humility and with a sense of reverence. The study of Torah fundamentally alters the human character, making it better and better with each passage through, with each explanation, with each further investigation. The study of Torah is the ultimate transformation power for the human spirit. And studying the Torah then leads to a higher and higher state of being for the individual. But then there is school number 2. And school number 2 says, the study of Torah, first, foremost, and primarily, changes the cosmic balance. It changes the universe. That when you engage in the act of Torah study, whatever effect it may have on you as an individual is almost inconsequential. What really matters is that you are lending your spiritual power to the never-ending struggle for this world to reach a point of redemption. And that as you study Torah, whatever may happen around you does not even come close in significance to what is happening in the heavens above, as your efforts, your spiritual pushing of the rock, move us one step closer to redemption each and every time. You are a warrior on a cosmic battlefield, and the study of Torah is your weapon, and it is the weapon that is defeating the misery of this world and bringing it closer to messianic redemption. Of the two, if we had a larger group here and we weren't all masked up, I would ask you, which one do you think is the older school of thought? Certainly the first one sounds very hippy-dippy, modern, psychoanalytical. It sounds a little liberal, you might even say. But in fact, it is the older school of thought. The second form of mystical power of Torah study was actually born in the Middle Ages, beginning with small steps after the First Crusades. As the communities of Europe were decimated and shocked by the mass slaughter and mass hysteria of their neighbors, they began to realize that their position in this world was not so secure. What was not a comfortable life, but was at least a predictable life, had suddenly been kicked over, exposing that there could be a massacre, that there could be destruction, and there could be dislocation at any minute, and on a scale that they had not experienced at that point for almost 500 years. And so, looking for explanations, mysticism slowly began to grow in popularity among the population. But Islamic aggression would further fuel this feeling of perhaps this world is not where the action is really taking place. Because if we see the villainy of the Crusaders and we see the villainy of the Islamic conquerors and we see them triumphing, that means that what must really be going on is going on behind the scenes. There must be something else where we are actually winning. Because certainly God would not make this world look like this. We know that we're right, and this world is wrong, therefore the real world must be right, and this world must be an illusion. This idea took off and was greatly enhanced following the expulsion of Spain. In 1492, when the Jews were finally removed from Spain after years of pressure and torment, this precipitated a new intellectual flowering of escapism, of belief that there was a mystic battle going on, and that what really mattered was how we poured our souls into Torah study and Torah understanding, and forget about the world. The world is unimportant. We are winning on the cosmic scale, even if we are losing in day-to-day life. And as communities continue to be impoverished and oppressed, continue to be pushed further and further into ghettos and further past the pale of settlement into what would eventually become Russia, and as we became more and more impoverished throughout many parts of the world, it was easy to take solace. It was comforting to know that they may be living large, they may be laughing at our exploitation and suffering, but we have the final laugh, because we know that on the mystic side, we are winning. But there was a downside to this fervor. There's a downside to mysticism in every faith where it begins to take over. And that is unrealized expectations. If you tell me that what I am doing when I am studying Torah is I am battling for good and that I am bringing redemption, Eventually, I want redemption. Eventually, you better deliver the goods. Because if the goods are always tomorrow, next year, next decade, the goods are always the Messiah will come eventually. But for now, just, be flogged, it's okay. It doesn't really matter. Eventually I get tired of being flogged. Eventually I get tired of being on the bottom. And either I will join those who claim that they are the Messiah, as happened many times in increasing frequency following the rise of mysticism, and I will follow them to my own destruction, oblivion, and often conversion to other faiths. Or I will eventually say, hang it all. If you're never going to deliver the goods, then why should I stick with this at all? And indeed, the rise of mysticism and the rise of be quiet and simply powerful prayer will bring about redemption is one of the reasons why assimilation became so attractive to many Jews in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. But look, the original idea of Torah study was simply right. Not to say that you cannot take solace from the mystical view. Of course, if it helps, if it gives you purpose, that's fine. But it is secondary to the primary purpose of Torah. When you read through Bahar Mekukotai, you see that God's primary focus for us from learning Torah is how it transforms us and this world. What happens on the mystical side, what happens on the cosmic scale, it's all well and good. But Torah will deliver benefits to you, here and now. It's not going to open up a vault of gold to shower down upon you. It is not going to remove all of the pain and suffering that can come in the world, but it will make you a better person. And it will make your life better than living without Torah. It is not a panacea. It is not an amulet. It is not some superstition there to protect us like a horseshoe. The Torah transforms us, and with us transformed, we transform the world. It is hard work. It takes a great deal of effort, but it is the only work that will truly succeed, and we already have seen the fruits of that effort. We only have to continue to apply ourselves, continue to work, and not expect miracles to bring about our redemption, but our sweat and our tears and our devotion to bring redemption much sooner. Shabbat Shalom.